Today, after a break that I think has been over a month, we return back to the suttas, and a humble group of suttas, I have to add, a humble group, but a powerful series of suttas at the same time. One in particular, today's, is the Kasibhāradvāja Sutta, which is from the Sutta Nipāta. That's what I was referring to as the powerful yet humble group of suttas. And it is Sutta Nipāta number 1.4. And it comes to us from the Uddaka Vagga. Uddaka is often translated as the serpent or the snake, because the first sutta of the whole Sutta Nipāta is the Uddaka Sutta, and it is the sutta, the discourse on the snake. It's actually on the worn out skin of a snake, and each verse keeps referring back to the person, the meditator, removing constantly at the end of every single verse, removing the old, removing the past, removing the old version of themselves, just like the snake removes its old, worn out skin. So that's where we get the whole chapter's title from, the Uddaka Vagga. So this sutta happens to fall within the first chapter of the Sutta Nipāta. We have several chapters within it, and each chapter has several suttas, up until like 16 suttas in some chapters. The Sutta Nipāta is one of the earliest verifiable group of suttas that we have that were in circulation, if you will, at the time of Lord Buddha. And the students knew sections of this long before we have come to know about, let's say, the Majjhima Nikāya, the Digha Nikāya, all these. Although those suttas were also in sections or segments were also familiar. In those days, they didn't have any writings of the suttas, so it was all by memory, by heart, however much they had memorized. And because of the almost melodic sequencing of suttas as found within the Sutta Nipāta, many bhikkhus, not just bhikkhus, lay people in some cases, would go ahead and memorize. And that would be their Dhamma for their practice, because the bhikkhus would go from region to region, and they would often recite segments of this. Wonderful, and it's not that big of a volume. And I mean the Sutta Nipāta. And Nipāta means grouping or group of discourses, discourses being for the sutta part. It comes to us from the Kuddaka Nikāya. We have Digha Nikāya, Majjhima Nikāya, Sangyutta Nikāya, Anguttara Nikāya, and Kuddaka Nikāya. Kuddaka Nikāya is basically a term for the collection of discourses that are short. They're the shortest Nikāya in a sense, because the teachings are small in chunks compared to the Digha Nikāya, which goes on for months, as the case was with the Mahasatipatthana, with the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, if you recall, which took us many weeks to complete. So over time, the Kuddaka Nikāya, the fifth of these books, became the repository or the place where other new works could be just tossed into over time. And that is where we have the addition of the Jatakas, or the early past lives of Lord Buddha, being tossed in there, which was a later development. You have elements that are not Buddhist, in fact, that are found in there. And you have the Vimana Vagga, you have the Buddha Vamsa, the past lives of Buddhas, etc. So you had many different, the Peta Vagga, on the hungry ghosts, books added. So up until, I think it's about 20 books. But the official number is much less than that. And the way we know that is through the pillars of Emperor Ashoka in India, who had listed all of these books on the pillars, just as he was having his scribes write down, carve on these pillars, that he was practicing the Panchasila, the 5 precepts, as the Emperor of India. He had taken on the Dhamma as his path. But as a devout Buddhist, he was also promulgating what is the Dhamma that is being taught, and what is the proper number of collections of discourses of Lord Buddhas that are available. And in it, he lists the Kuddaka Nikāya books. So you have basically, not in that order necessarily, Udana, Itivuttaka, you have the Sutta Nipāta, you have the Dhammapada, you have the Theragata and Therigata. And how many is that? 6, it's supposed to be 6. So anyhow, basically the number is much shorter than what the Kuddaka Nikāya ended up being. But as the original teachings, as found within the discourses, in other discourses, we can really look at the Sutta Nipāta as an authentic series of suttas that are found. So much so that if you recall from the Majjhima Sutta that we talked about, and other suttas in the previous sutta explorations, you have groups of bhikkhus coming together discussing a certain teaching they get from the Sutta Nipāta. For example, the seamstress, if you recall, the Majjhima Sutta, the one in the middle, that comes from the Sutta Nipāta. And so I wanted to, as I started this new venture, this project of translating the whole Sutta Nipāta, I found it necessary for us to kind of get a glimpse of what these suttas are. It's a different structure than the other suttas, as you will see, but nevertheless equally beautiful. So today's sutta is the Kasibhāradvāja Sutta. Kasi in this case means kasinati. Kasi has to do with farming, plowing. So Kasibhāradvāja means Bharadvāja, the farmer. And he was not a typical farmer because he was a wealthy. He came from the upper class of India, meaning he was from the Brahmin class. And the Brahmins, there are the type of Brahmins that are dedicated to chants and rituals and all that. That is their life. And then there's the other group of Brahmins that actually are very much involved with making a living and all that. But they are always categorized as the upper echelon of society because they're very wealthy as well, as you will see. So this is the Kasibhāradvāja Sutta, Sutta Nipāta number 1.4. Let's begin. I have personally heard this. Then again, that is Venerable Ananda reciting this in the first council whenever we see that phrase. I have personally heard this. Once the Blessed One was living among the southern hills in the Brahmin village Ekanala within the Magadhan kingdom. It was during that time, by the way, the Magadhan kingdom was the most powerful kingdom in the Madhya Pradesh, which is the middle country of India. That's how it was known, as middle, central part. And Magadha was the most powerful kingdom. So it was during that time when the Brahmin farmer Bharadvāja had been plowing the fields with his 500 yoked oxen. So he's plowing the fields, he's getting the ground, the soil ready for sowing, to plant the seeds. So it is that time of the year when the farmers are preparing the soil, tilling the land, etc. Then, when it was morning, the Blessed One, after putting on his robes and taking his alms bowl and outer robe with him, went to the field where Bharadvāja, the Brahmin farmer, was plowing the land. Often we ignore these tiny little details that are being given to us within the sutta as to, and when it was morning, the Blessed One put on his robes. These things, we should not ignore them and just say, oh, okay, it's like a preamble to a sutta. Okay, so this is what happens. No. There's also a human element, as you've seen me emphasize again and again. We need to always pay attention to the human element. Meaning, Lord Buddha had spent the whole night meditating, possibly also teaching the devas at night, early morning hours. So his normal sleeping time was about 3 hours every night, just to rest the body. He was always engaged in teaching lay people, teaching the monastics, and teaching the devas, the non-human beings, the celestial beings. And then he wakes up in the morning and the body needs food. So he can't just go without his 3 sets of robes. So he has to have all 3 robes with him and the bowl to collect the food in. But this particular instant, in this event, we see something else, as you will discover. Here, Lord Buddha is preparing to go and see Bharadvāja intentionally. He's not going on simple pindapada, just alms round. There's a purpose. Because, as we see in the commentary of this sutta, Lord Buddha knew that Bharadvāja's mind was ready. And as the great teacher that he was, he would go everywhere, anywhere, however long it took to get to that student who was prepared. And that is what we're seeing here. Lord Buddha is setting off on a journey to go to see Bharadvāja. On the surface, you might see, oh, Lord Buddha is just going to get his alms food like he normally would. But we shouldn't be looking at it like this, especially given the context of how the sutta is unfolding as we'll go through it. Now, when the Blessed One arrived, Bharadvāja was seen distributing food. So the Blessed One went there and stood silently. As bhikkhus, we cannot just go and knock on people's doors and say, excuse me, we're here. Can you fill up my bowl, please? We can't. At the most, I've seen some people do is they would have a layperson write on a piece of plaque or a piece of paper what the whole ritual, if you will, is all about. The bhikkhu is looking downward, about 5 feet in front of him, not looking at people, gaze lowered, therefore, with the bowl held securely in his hands. But in some cultures, like in Europe and other places where this is not known, was not known at least, you would have someone walking in front of the bhikkhu with that plaque. Now, in this case, this is a known thing in India. So you would see a bhikkhu, a homeless person, someone who's wearing rags, basically, standing there with a bowl. So especially in the austere position of Lord Buddha, he would not look at someone unless they were being addressed. And he would communicate with them. So anyhow, Lord Buddha is standing there at the site where Bharadvāja is known to be distributing food at that time. So among the other people, the beggars, all these people who were there, as a Brahmin, his purpose was to give, at that time of day, to provide food for good karma. So the Blessed One was just standing there silently. On seeing the Blessed One stand there for alms, Bharadvāja remarked in verse, "Recluse, I work by plowing and sowing. Only afterwards do I eat." So basically, let's see, and then I'll speak. "If you want to eat, then do as I do, and first plow and sow. And only after you have plowed and sowed, you may eat." Basically, he's ridiculing Lord Buddha. He was not a lay supporter. He was simply a businessman in a sense. He was a farmer, but he had so many, people in oxen working for him. And one can presume so many people, open mouths, basically hungry mouths, were there for him to feed. Many of whom we can see also, we can perhaps even deduce that were physically not as healthy as Lord Buddha, healthy looking. Because Lord Buddha taught us the middle path, the Majjhima Pada. Many of the other recluses that Bharadvāja would be feeding here would probably be in the same category of practitioners as Siddhartha Gautama was for over 6 years, meaning emaciated, hungry looking, about to faint. Basically, how people to this day believe that the spiritual path is to be gained, the holy life is to be lived, meaning by starving yourself, by having your hair grow, by having your nails grow, basically becoming, a grotesque version of what a normal human being should look like. So here was a person who looked, cleanly shaven and standing there appropriately, almost regal, because Lord Buddha was the son of a king. So if you're that healthy and that normal looking, what is stopping you from getting hold of a plow and a shovel or something and come over here and start plowing the land with me and earn your living? Very logical way of seeing. So this also puts us in the mindset of Bharadvāja, how he viewed living the holy life to be, meaning you need to be extremely skinny, this and that, and you have to be exuding, having your hair and your, dreadlocks, all these things, and, you have to look spiritual, come on, but he wasn't seeing any of those things. But his mind was ready. That's why Lord Buddha is standing there. But he doesn't know that. Bharadvāja doesn't know that. And the Blessed One responded by saying, "Brahmin, I too plow and sow, and it is only afterwards that I eat." So it's almost like a riddle. And then he responds. Bharadvāja is, okay, so you plow and sow, but let's see. "But I do not see Master Gautama with a plow or a plowshare or even a driving stick, nor any oxen with him. Yet Master Gautama says, 'Brahmin, I too plow and sow, and it is only afterwards that I eat.'" So he's now calling him up on, okay, so you're saying that, but so he's now going to reverse back to his usage of verses. And apparently he happens to be, it sounds like, a Brahmin that also knows the verses, the Vedas. So they love intonations, they love memorizing mantras and things. So, and he seems quite eloquent, it seems here. You claim, so then the Brahmin farmer Bhāradvāja addressed the Blessed One again in verse. You claim to be a farmer, but we do not see you plowing. Tell us, what is the kind of plowing that you do, so I may come to know of what it is that you farm and plow. So now he's curious. This curiosity is the first step to developing chanda in us. Chanda is that desire, that fervency, which is an absolute must. We cannot sit to meditate. We cannot have any insights. Forget about it unless we have chanda first. It is like the plate, the empty, clean plate, which allows the rest of the food to be placed on it. Whatever is to come from the spiritual path will have to depend on that baseline. Chanda, that desire to go deeper, meaning that curiosity. Even though on the surface here, Bharadvāja might seem like he's very, sarcastic even, but he's not. He's curious here, as we will soon find out. And the Blessed One replied, faith is the seed, while restraint is the rain, whereas wisdom is my yoke and plow. Wise moral shame is the pole, the beam that holds the whole setup of the plowshare in check. And the mind, its reins, the things that you need to hold on, the straps of leather or whatnot that is attached to the oxen. So you need to guide the oxen with those reins like a horse. While mindfulness is my driving stick, my God, the thing to get the ox to move in a certain way. Saddha is the first, he says. Saddha is also, in English, we can translate as confidence, faith, which is another aspect of chanda. Chanda is the spark, but you need to maintain that with saddha. Saddha is one of those key spiritual faculties and powers. It turns into a power. And it's absolutely necessary for the practice to grow, to be even functioning from day to day. When one day's meditation does not seem like it's going anywhere, maybe the whole week, you have to maintain trust in the goodness in your heart to want to be there on that retreat, let's say, when after 3 or 4 or 5 days, it seems like nothing's happening. You're stuck. And you go claiming, anger, or actually you're angry and you go to the teacher saying, I'm going to quit. And many people do. Well, what happened to your saddha? That you also, when you take Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa, and then you say, Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi. What is that? Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi. I take refuge in the Buddha. What is it that you're actually taking refuge in? The fact that you also have the same capacity for awakening, to experience bodhi, that awakening, the same one that Lord Buddha did. One of the qualities of Lord Buddha is also that he is an arahant, like every other arahant. So there is no difference in the arahantship quality of the awakening. So that saddha has to be there. And you need to maintain that. So Lord Buddha calls that the seed. Faith is the seed, he says, to Bharadvāja. So my practice is no different when you look at it in that sense, he says. And then he says, wise moral shame, which is hiri. Hiri is one big factor that is missing in today's society, in the world today. And there cannot be an awakened society. It's impossible without wise moral shame. and it's getting wiped out from schools, from educational systems, from society. There isn't that shame. That is a must. Whether you're living the holy life or just living a normal lay life. So that is the beam, Lord Buddha calls it. The thing which holds the whole plowing mechanism. And then he says, the mind is its reins. The mind, how are you maintaining the mind? Meaning, is there wisdom in your practice, or is it unwise? Are you just going on automatic pilot? Because the sati has to keep the thing in check. And that is the God, that is the driving stick that makes sure that the horse or the yoke or the ox keeps steady on its path. It doesn't keep moving around between when it's plowing. It needs to make sure that it goes in a straight line. Otherwise, it just wasted energy. Next, he says, being guarded thus in body, guarded in speech, I eat only what the body needs and no more. I use truth as my weeding hook, and soft forbearance is my release. So body, which is kaya, and vachi, which is the speech, they are both restrained. They have to be. For anything, it's just for your own sake, so that you can maintain sila, to maintain, because sila is the doorway ultimately to panya. Sila is not just for sila's sake. It is preparing the mind. It is preparing the mind for samadhi. And because the mind is in samadhi, there is a doorway that is open for panya. Plain and simple. So you are well guarded. And further, it is also a lifestyle that is in works with moderation in food. You don't keep eating. So he's now saying, I'm not here to eat, my friend. I'm not here. He's giving him clues. He's giving him Dhamma. Normally, we see Lord Buddha giving a Dhamma talk after the food has been served, after he has eaten, after he stops eating. That's when Lord Buddha gives a Dhamma talk. Not just him, but his Arya Savakas as well. But here, we're seeing the Dhamma discourse, the Dhamma discussion, the Dhamma teaching is being offered to this layperson. When there is this facade, this semblance that there is a dana lunch dana about to be offered. So this is something that it's an unusual setting compared to the other suttas. And Lord Buddha says, continues, persevering effort is my yoked ox, which carries me all the way to my goal, non-stop, relentlessly, where having reached it, there is no more grieving. If you've ever seen any field that's been plowed, even the ones that are huge, like mechanized, industrial countries, especially when you're about to land and you come across these huge acres of land, and you see, sometimes you see these huge machines. Well, they have to reach at the end of that field, the borderline. So what they do is they have to switch. They have to turn around somehow so that they can go back. So it's like a zigzag motion, right? Almost like interlacing in film, it's called. But this motion going back and forth, back and forth. Lord Buddha is saying there is no such thing with me in this path. He says, the plow, the Buddha's plow does not stop. It keeps going without turning. Without turning. It doesn't have, you don't hit the ox or the animal or yourself to turn the plowshare, to turn it around. It's one directional. in that sense. It is anivattantang in Pali, anivattantang, which means none or without any turning, until, that is, it reaches the final goal, and which is freedom from bondage, and which is yoga kema. That is the freedom from the bondage. So there's no more plowshare needed anymore, because the person has arrived. Yatthagantva, having gone there, he has arrived. And because of that, there is nisochati. Nisochati means there is no grieving. So now Bharadvāja understands that this is not a normal farming dialogue. They're not having a dialogue for plowing and things like that and sowing. He sees that this is not your typical, recluse. This is the way I do my plowing, Lord Buddha continues, where the deathless is the fruit of the harvest. Amata. Amata is the deathless. In other words, it's a definition for, another definition for Nibbana, for moksha, for liberation. So he says that is the ultimate goal. That's the fruit of my plowing, my farming. Where in your case, it might be, we don't know what he's farming, but let's say wheat. So in the case of the Dhamma, Lord Buddha says it is the deathless. And when you are finished doing this kind of farming, you are released fully from all suffering. What a fruit, what a harvest that is. In hearing these words, the Brahmin farmer, Bharadvāja, reached for a bronze bowl, his personal bowl. In some versions of the sutta, they say golden bowl, but I didn't see any evidence that would indicate. Plus, if you're that rich, you're not going to be carrying gold with you, golden, especially big golden bowl with you. Bronze is what was most satisfactory version of this translation, which I did. And by filling it up with deliciously rich milk rice, he presented it to the Blessed One by saying, "May Master Gautama eat this milk rice. It seems that you are indeed a farmer, for the plowing that you do results in one to straightway taste the deathless as its fruit." So, by the way, milk rice is payasa. That's the Pali word for it. It's milk rice. It's like really the creme de la creme of the milk, and then they sweeten it with the rice, and it is also it's a delicacy, and it's a dessert. Think of it. But here we see Bharadvāja offering his own basically portion of the meal to Lord Buddha. On the surface, it looks very, it's very venerating, it's very respectful, and it's not so different than Sujata's offering, Lady Sujata's offering of the milk rice to Lord Buddha, actually Siddhartha Gautama on the night of his awakening, on the day of his awakening. But Lord Buddha, we're going to see how he will refuse this, because the teaching is not done yet for Bharadvāja. That is, Bharadvāja still is functioning from just a mere putujjana, a lay person, uneducated, undeveloped person. He's just respecting Lord Buddha, that's it, as a religious teacher, because he's still going with verses and incantations and mantras. So remember, this is coming to us from 2,600 years ago. So we only have a small glimpse of what took place. Sometimes we think, oh, this is exactly what happened. That is not the case. That is not a healthy way of doing textual analysis, looking at texts. There's so much that only this portion was picked up from that moment that took place 2,600 years ago. So we need to be broad-minded and open to see other possibilities. And the Blessed One continued speaking. It is not appropriate for me to eat food that has been offered by the chanting of verses. After all, this is not the way for those who have the ability to see correctly, meaning those who have the Dhamma eye. So the sutta doesn't say much as to the chanting of verses. So one might think that perhaps Bharadvāja took the bowl, the milk rice, and said some mantras, or the whole series of verses that he was doing so far, or the intention in offering his bronze bowl to Lord Buddha. So this, not counting the fact that Lord Buddha is trying to see if Bharadvāja is truly ready for arahantship. So he's giving him all the right doses of Dhamma, if you will. And then Lord Buddha says, the Buddhas reject the practice of incantations, and so long as the Dhamma exists, Brahmin, this position remains. In a world where, in a Buddhist world where incantations is almost what we have whenever people go to the Dhamma hall, chanting is another version of incantations for many people. Those who don't understand the Pali, or what is it that is being chanted. So there is no essentially difference between what they hear when they go to a Vedic ceremony, when there is chanting, mantras, or any other type of religious activity other than Buddhist, where they have something like that, and what they hear when they hear the parittas, the chants. So to look at them as incantations is a problem. That is something that here we see Lord Buddha refusing to include within the teaching methodology of the Dhamma. So if we listen to the suttas, that's wonderful, but not to treat them as mantras, not to treat them as some magical incantations to ward off, let's say, evil, to do this or that. Ratana Sutta, for example, is a perfect example. Well, it is a perfect example because you have Venerable Buddhaghosa some centuries later, including within it elements of his Hindu and Vedic background, to make the Ratana Sutta be simply a series of suttas that just, verses rather, that serve to ward off evil. And it is much more than that. But that is what it has turned into over the centuries. So if you go complaining about your life to a bhikkhu or a temple and ask for help with this evil energy, let's say, that you think is evil, is happening to you, chances are they're going to definitely include Ratana Sutta as an incantation. And that is what we have to be careful of. We have to look at the suttas as suttas, teaching methods, not some incantation. These words that mean nothing to us other than just to kind of push away some negative energy or something like that, or make things happen. So here we see Lord Buddha saying the Buddhas have nothing to do with such incantations. And if you're going to be offering it to me, that is not the way to go. In fact, he's completely going to be refusing the milk rice, as it were, as we'll see. Instead, he says, if you just concern yourself with making the offering of food and drink to the great sage who has destroyed the mental contaminants, the one whose heart is completely calm from all kinds of guilty remorse, kukucha, uddacha, kukucha, restlessness, and that guilty remorse, which holds us back. He says that should be your way of, the intention behind it has to be right. Thus, such a one is the fertile field of merits for all those seeking their gain. So his offering was not pure. Bharadvaja's offering was not pure. So by Lord Buddha, in essence, refusing the dana because of the purpose was wrong, of it having the wrong reasons, he is still maintaining the teaching. The Dhamma has not stopped from being taught to Bharadvaja, basically. He says, go and find yourself a fertile field of merits, someone who is truly a sage, someone who truly needs to be offered food with a pure heart. He didn't have a pure heart when he was giving the milk rice. In that case, Master Gautama, replied Bharadvaja, to whom should I be making this offering of milk rice? A very logical question. Brahmin, among all the gods and humans, its Maras and Brahmas, this entire population of recluses and Brahmins, I do not see even a single being who, by taking this milk rice, would be able to consume and digest it, except for the Tathagata, or one of his true disciples. So this can be like, the opposite of what Lord Buddha said, one might think. So it's contradiction almost, but it's not. Because Lord Buddha refused the meal automatically, that has within it tremendous power. That has within it very strong significance, and even through the rejection. Remember, there was a purpose why Lord Buddha refused to accept it, as I mentioned. But if there is anyone who could consume it, we don't know how easily, but he could consume it, and that would be a Buddha or an Arya Savaka, a student of Lord Buddha's, who could consume it, he's saying. So this throws Bharadvaja in a spin, in a sense, because we also see this reference being made in different places, and one that comes to mind is Chunda, the goldsmith, who offered the last meal to Lord Buddha, if you recall from the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. In the end, the delicious truffle meal that was prepared, not poisoned or rotten pork meal that is still being promulgated, unfortunately, in people's minds in the sasana, but that delicious truffle meal that was the last meal given to Lord Buddha. He ate the portion, and the remainder he told Chunda to go and bury it or throw it somewhere where there's no life. And he goes and gives it back to Mother Earth, and then he comes back. So there's a powerful aspect to these things, so that we need to be cognizant of. And also us bhikkhus, whenever we have food that is left over, and it is instructed by Lord Buddha to us to, especially if you're living in remote places, to toss it into a body of water where you look and you see that there's no fish or any visible life form, or to bury it. So we're going to see that here. Therefore, Brahmin, throw away that milk rice where there is little or no life at all, or cast it into the water where there are no living beings that you could discern. Mother Earth could accept it. And it's interesting how the source of all those others we actually have seen here in Sutta Nipāta now. This is happening way before the last meal, as you can guess. And just as directed, the Brahmin farmer Bhāradvāja threw the milk rice in the water where there were no living beings that he could discern. Now, there's also a reason why Lord Buddha told him to do this, because he's exercising also the power of a Buddha to nudge Bharadvaja, to push him over the edge, if you will, to shock him, because it seems that Bharadvaja looks for and needs to see something of the supernatural in order for him to be jolted from the inside, to be moved with saddha. because he heard Lord Buddha's teaching of Dhamma, but it seems that it did not, they did not make the mark for him. So Lord Buddha is teaching him in absentia at this point, because he's taking the bowl of milk rice and tossing it, and then we'll see what happens. But the moment he cast it into the water, suddenly it began making hissing sounds as the water began sizzling and sending out smoke. So it starts boiling. So now you can imagine, he's a Brahmin. He's grown up around rituals. That's their life. And now all of a sudden seeing that, and there are no incantations. There is no priest chanting mantras. This is happening simply because he offered something to Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha refused, and he said there's no being in the whole entire universe that could accept it other than a Buddha or his disciple. Therefore, because I'm not accepting it, go ahead and toss it wherever there is no life. And he just did that, and he's seeing this. On witnessing this taking place in front of his eyes, suddenly Bharadvāja became terrified and awestruck, and he began trembling as his hairs stood on end. Recovering from his shock, he returned back to the Blessed One, fell down to his knees while placing his head at the feet of Lord Buddha, and uttered these words. How wonderful! It is just amazingly wonderful. I feel as though Master Gautama has turned upright what was overturned, revealing what was hidden, showing the correct path to someone who was lost, as though one were to bring a lamp into the darkness for all those with eyesight to see. So this is a declaration that we see countless times in suttas, where a person has had a major change of focus. They have had this epiphany, as it were, of the Dhamma. Master Gautama, you have made the Dhamma clear to me in many ways. And then we see how immediately he drops everything. Bhante, I go for refuge to Master Gautama, to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of Bhikkhus. May the Blessed One grant me the going forth by giving me the higher ordination in his dispensation. So he's now asking for the pabbajja, the going forth, and then the higher ordination, the upasampada, that makes him a bhikkhu. So he's asking that. And this is the earlier days of the sasana. So Lord Buddha is much younger, and the Sangha is not that grown into such a huge number. And so the protocols were a lot less stringent, shall we say. Thus, because Lord Buddha gives him the ordinations, thus the Brahmin farmer Bhāradvāja received the going forth and the higher ordination in the Blessed One's dispensation. Soon after his higher ordination, the Venerable Bhāradvāja, while living alone and secluded from the crowd, living heedfully and with resolution, while practicing diligently, before long, he here and now was able to finally realize by himself the noble end of the holy life, experiencing for himself that unsurpassed knowledge for which sons of good families rightfully leave the household life by becoming homeless. And the Venerable Bhāradvāja knew for himself with certainty unparalleled. Now, birth is finally destroyed. The holy life is fully lived. What should be done is now done, and there is no more coming to any state of becoming. And Venerable Bhāradvāja became one of the Arahants. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Another inspiring sutta, and one that moves us to urgency, to Sangvega, to include it in our lives. Sangvega does not necessarily mean going and asking for pabbajja and upasampada as Bhāradvāja did. If you have those means, go for it. But does that mean that's the only way that one can practice urgency? No, of course not. Perhaps you have very busy lives. demanding lives. You have responsibilities. You have to take care of things. You have to take care of people. You can maintain your practice beautifully while also having the reins on the urgency in your life. How often are you bringing sati into those difficult to make decisions in your workplace? Or when you're in the bus, or when you're in the train, or when you're in your car, or standing at a bus stop, or at your office, and you're pondering all these difficult possibilities and perhaps negative scenarios, running them through your head. I said this, and this is going to happen. How am I going to make this decision? Oh, so many people's income is different. All these things. Please do not extricate, remove sati from those juicy territories of your mind. That is the place where sati grows. That is the fertile soil for sati. Without sati, there is no Dhamma. Please understand that. Without sati, there cannot be any Dhamma. Dhamma is not going to be like, in some other religions, it's like revelation. All of a sudden the clouds open up and then there's something from God. There's no such thing in this practice. It's a practice. So, and go easy on yourself in that sense, that, and trusting sati, just have sati be there, linger, while you're making those difficult decisions, while you stub your toe, while you are about to make that, sign that document, or have that phone call that you don't necessarily enjoy. Can I bring a drop of sati here and there? And if you do, throughout your day already, it connects everything. You can connect the dots, and when you connect the dots, that's what we can call panya, aha moment. You see the connections. You see the presence of Dhamma everywhere. So by extricating, removing sati, you would also be removing and extricating the Dhamma from your life. So the Dhamma cannot be placed in a cubicle, in a box, and say, okay, I'll get to you later when all the other stuff are taken care of. When I've lived my day as I should, then I'll come back to you, Dhamma. I'll read a few suttas or listen to Dhamma talk on the, in the car, in the commute. That's not Dhamma. Please know that. It's like your love for someone so dear in your life. Does it stop when you go to work? The love that you have for this person, or the relevancy that this body has for you, the person. Does it stop having that significance for you? This is me, this is my body, these are my legs, these are my hands, I need to use them. So there is always that we bring that in. We bring that in. That involvement. So bring the Dhamma into the role of a loved one and share your day with the Dhamma. Can we do that? Sharing the day with the Dhamma. It can be in the form of sati, it could be in the form of sila. You pick. So I've been talking for some time, and I hope this was an unusual sutta, and on the surface it looks very, very simple, but I wanted us to get a look at behind the scenes, as it were. So I hope it helps. Are there any questions, thoughts, comments? Silence is also good. Well, I hope you are able to take some of it with you. Not every Bharadvāja goes and becomes a monk. So Please be aware of that. A few days ago, someone was probing me to find out whether I, as a bhikkhu, I look at a true practitioner as being in the shape of a monk or a monastic, whether that is the primary requirement. And they're a lay person, as you can tell. And I said, no. You think all these monks are arahants around on the planet? Do we actually? But sometimes we believe that. So as a lay person, you have every potential of becoming an arahant because you're surrounded by fertile soil to tap into. And there's less propensity or less tendency to think that now I'm safe and secure, meaning as the case is with monasticism at large, not just in Buddhism, where the person, the human being, because of our defilements and ignorance, we might start to think that, oh, I'm protected, I am living the holy life. Not necessarily. I've met many, many lay people who are walking the holy life without having shaved their head. Their heart is in the right place, basically. And that is what my invitation for you is. Please don't separate yourself. Put yourself at a lower level and saying, well, that's not for me because I'm so busy. I work 50 hours a week and no, bring your sila samadhi panya in the form of sati into your days. And don't worry about the outside appearances. Okay? So, let's do some sharing of merits. May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of wholesome happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you be well. May your smile never leave your heart, your face. May you walk with metta at your feet. Feet that keep wearing those lovely sandals of metta and you don't have to remove them ever. Even when you go to bed. Be well until next time, which I hope it will be next week. So I want to revive our sequential, that frequency of sessions. So hopefully we'll be able to. So until next week, be well. Sukhi Hotu.